Hi, I'm Steve Endo and I'm a Microsoft MVP. Today I'd like to share a few tips to help you save time and work more efficiently in SQL Server Management Studio. The number one recommendation that I have when using SQL Server Management Studio is to use the Object Explorer Details window whenever possible. When you launch Management Studio, you'll often see the Object Explorer pane on the left side of the application. If the Details window is not visible on the right, I recommend that the first thing you do is press F7 to open the Details window. Let's take a look at a few benefits of using the Object Explorer Details window. When you launch Management Studio, if you only see the Object Explorer pane on the left side, press F7 to open the Object Explorer Details window in a new tab. So I'm going to press F7. I recommend using the Object Explorer Details window whenever possible. For example, whenever I want to navigate tables, I can click on this list and quickly type a few characters in order to find the table I'm looking for. So if I want to see the PM tables, I can just type PM1 and it instantly jumps to my PM tables. So that's the first great benefit. If you've ever tried to search on the Object Explorer window, you know that it doesn't work. So here, if I click here, I'll press G, nothing happens. It doesn't jump to the table that I want. So it's much more time consuming to navigate using Object Explorer versus Object Explorer Details. The other nice feature of the Object Explorer Details window is this search box. So another way to find objects is to type all or part of the name in the search box, and you can use wildcards, press enter, and it'll find all instances or all objects that have that name. This is particularly helpful if you're looking at stored procedures. As you know, with Dynamics GP, there are a lot of stored procedures, and it's often very tedious to navigate through them. So if I want to find a particular stored procedure, I can just type in the beginning of the name and a wildcard and find all the stored procedures with that similar name. Next, I'd like to share a few tips when you're working in a query window. When you're testing or debugging a SQL script, you'll often see an error message in the bottom of the query window. Let's look at two tips that can help you save time when you see these messages. If you're debugging a large or complex query, you'll sometimes get error messages in the bottom of the query results window. And so you see I have several here. One nice trick is that you can double-click on each of the error messages, and it'll take you directly to the line in the SQL query that's generating the error. Management Studio also has a related option to help you navigate your query based on line numbers. So if you click on Tools, Options, and if you expand the text editor, you can do it by language, but here I'm going to choose all languages, and I'm going to enable line numbers. When I click OK, you'll see that I have line numbers down the left side of the query. And so here, this is telling me that the error is on line 136, and sure enough, on 136, it doesn't recognize that parameter. Now, let's take a look at some ways to save time when working with query results. Two of the most popular file formats for saving or sharing query results are Excel and CSV. SQL Server Management Studio has two nice features that will help you save your query results in those formats. Let's look at those features. So a fairly common task that you'll perform in SQL Server Management Studio involves taking your output result set and sending it to someone else or saving that data. And oftentimes this involves copying the data in your results down here and pasting it into a file. And you can press Control-A to highlight all of your results and copy it, and then, for instance, paste it into Excel. But the problem here is that you don't have column headers. It's just the raw data. So there is the feature here to highlight all of your data, right-click, and choose the Copy with Headers feature, or Control-Shift-C. And this is usually much more helpful when you're pasting your data into a file such as Excel. And so you can bold that, you can underline it, and then you can reformat your columns, and it looks much more presentable in Excel format. So you may have a situation where you want to output your query results directly to a text file. SQL Server has an option to help with that process. So under Tools, Options, under the Query Results SQL Server Results to Text settings page, you'll notice this Output Format option. Normally this is set to column aligned for a text output format, but you do have the option to choose comma delimited, tab delimited, space delimited, or even a custom delimiter. So if we choose comma delimited here, I will change the output results to text, rerun the query, and you'll notice that the output results are comma delimited, but be careful here, this is not a true CSV format. So although the field values are separated by commas, if there is a comma within a text field, it will not have apostrophes around the text value. So it won't necessarily be parsed properly by a CSV parser. So in those cases, comma delimited may not be the greatest choice for this output if there is the chance that a comma may be in your text values. However, it would be great for tab delimited format, as the tab delimited file format won't be bothered by commas. So that's an option for your output format directly to text. And there are some situations where pasting the data into Excel will cause your leading zeros in certain fields to be lost. So there is a benefit of using this approach rather than copying and pasting your data into Excel and saving it from there. My last tip relates to using Management Studio on a high DPI display. If you have a 4K monitor, or if you have a Microsoft Surface Pro, you may have noticed that Management Studio windows sometimes have inconsistent font sizes, or the text or buttons don't display properly. This is generally called a scaling issue, and it affects many applications that haven't been updated to work with high DPI displays. Fortunately, there's a workaround for this issue, and it involves what is called an external manifest file and bitmap scaling. That sounds pretty technical, but the good news is that you don't need to understand any of the details. You just need to copy a file. Let's take a look at how to fix the scaling issue. So this is Management Studio running on my Surface Pro 4. And you'll notice over on the left in Object Explorer, the folders are very small. If I right-click on my server, go to Properties, you'll see that things look kind of squished. This text here is cut off, the icons here are very small, and I can resize some of this, but some of this I cannot resize and cannot see the text. So you can see the scaling issues and some of the fonts aren't quite right. So to fix that, we're going to do two things. We'll close SQL Server Management Studio, and this is the blog post that explains this process. This is on SQLServerCentral.com, and it talks about SSMS and high DPI displays. So there are basically just two steps to resolve the problem. The first is to run this registry entry, and it basically just sets one setting in the registry. So you'll need administrative permissions to do that. So I'll double-click on scaling.reg, and it asks if I want to add that to the registry, and I'll say yes. And then next, I have a manifest file here. And the manifest file just has a bunch of settings that tell Windows to use bitmap scaling for the application. And you'll notice this file is named ssms.exe.manifest. It matches the name of the executable. I already have a copy of that manifest file in my Program Files x86 SQL Server Tools Bin Management Studio directory. And so I'm just going to rename that so that it is ssms.exe.manifest. And now I'm going to relaunch SQL Server Management Studio. And you may notice that the splash screen is sized slightly differently, and the proportions are a little different after restart. And you'll notice that my folders are appearing properly here. They look much better. And go to Properties, and you'll see that this window is sized more appropriately. I see my connection information, the text is all readable, and all the proportions look correct. I hope you found these SQL Server Management Studio tips useful. If you like this video, make sure to check out my other videos, my blog, and follow me on Twitter @SteveEndo.